Hi guys, and welcome to this week's video, where we're talking about lockdown support for New South Wales business owners. This information is presented on the 24th of August 2021, and it is the updated edition. Let's do it. Well, welcome back, guys, to this week's video, where we're talking about, really what is an update on the current situation with the government grants that are there for New South Wales business owners. A lot has changed since we did the initial video where we talked about the business grants that were available, whether it was the business grant, the JobSaver grant, or the micro business grant. So I'm going to be pretty much talking today about the updates that have happened in the last few weeks. I do suggest that you do have a look at our previous video where we have a detailed discussion about a lot of the grant. So today we're going to be focusing on a lot of the updates. So the business grant and the JobSaver grant, I'm going to sort of talk about these at the same time. With the business grant, there was a bit of an issue for businesses whereby they might have had failed the initial test to compare their turnover. And initially, when the business grant first came out, when you looked at your decline period of your turnover, you looked at the same period in 2019. But the reality was that if you'd started your business just before COVID had started, you were already out because there was nothing to compare to. So the wisdom of Service New South Wales, they finally realised that, hey, a lot of people were locked out of the business grant and couldn't get it. So what they have since done is there are two alternative periods you can look at. Effectively, you can look at the same period in 2020, or you can also look at a 2-week period immediately before the Greater Sydney lockdown began, which effectively is the 12th of June to the 25th of June, 2021. Just pretty much the same there with the JobSaver grant. It's pretty much identical to the business grant, so the same sort of decline period. The only thing that would be slightly different is the minimum 2-week period that you can compare to is anywhere between the 26th of June 2021 right up to the 28th of August 2021. Now, I dare say we are recording this today on the 24th of August, and lockdown has been announced that it's pretty much going to happen right through to September. If I was a betting man, which I can be sometimes, I would dare say that date, the 28th of August, probably will extend right through to September. And there may be some businesses that are not feeling that pinch or that decline in turnover until probably the month of September. But nonetheless, you still have quite a few different decline periods there you can choose from now as well. So a few extra things. Okay, so I'm going to, some of this slide here is pretty much a grab and post there from the previous video that I did. But I guess a few things there. The date that you can apply till is still the same. But once again, if lockdown does continue in September, I dare say that date to apply will probably shift over into October. So you should be probably, at the moment, it's saying on their website that you can apply till the 13th of September 2021. But I dare say that period probably will extend into October. But we can't go over that until that is on their website. But if you do qualify, I do suggest you get onto it as soon as you can. To qualify, you can go on the Service New South Wales and apply. Alternatively, if you are struggling and not sure how to do it, you can now get your accountant or your bookkeeper, BAS agent or tax agent or accountant to apply for you on your behalf. So the eligibility criteria there, not much has really changed. And also the maintaining employees and the definition of an employee has not changed either. So with the JobSaver business grant, a few things have changed here. At this point in time, you do have till the 18th of October to apply for the grant. And once again, you can apply on at Service New South Wales on their website. So the main changes that they've had in the eligibility criteria is that the annual turnover is between 75,000 and 250 million. And the greater lockdown period is now extended to the end of August 2021. As I was kind of alluding to before, I dare say that, if we are in lockdown until September, that date will most likely extend into September. And in addition, as I said in one of the previous slides there, you still also have now to compare 2019, 2020, and then also 2 weeks before lockdown. With the business grant as well, the employee headcount definition has not changed either. So this is a big one that you really want to have a look at, because if you were a new business and you had started anywhere between, I guess, June 2019 until the 1st of June 2021, this is the slide that you really want to concentrate on. And the reality is that if you're a new business, you looked at the previous test when we did the previous video, or you looked at this maybe even 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, there was no real option there for you and you were locked out. But now there are alternative tests, and the most common scenarios are really, like I just said before, a business had really started post June 2019 and before the 1st of June 2021, or there could be, for example, like maybe during the 2020 financial year, which was the period where you had to show that you had equivalent turnover of 75,000 or more, that you didn't meet that criteria, and that could be anything because of sickness, injury, or leave. I had particularly one client who every winter in June goes away on a holiday, and she goes away for 3 weeks. So effectively, her turnover was sitting at $73,000, but that meant she was under that 75,000. So when this first came out, she didn't on the surface qualify at all. But since the Service New South Wales has altered and added in these alternative rules, when we have a look and we take like a pro rata and annualize what she's actually earned over, I guess, that period when she was working, it quite easily gets over 75,000. So this could also be as well, like the common scenarios is where a business has been impacted by, an acquisition. So it might be that, you've bought the business between June 19 and the 1st of June 2021. Or it could even be that maybe you did a restructure. So you might have gone from a sole trader to a company. And if that's the case, look, we can look at, and the way I understand it on the Service New South Wales website is that we can basically treat that restructure as if it's one entity. Okay, so let's have a look at these steps, to have a look and see whether you qualify based on the turnover. So as I said before, we need to get equivalent turnover of 75,000 or more. Okay, and so the way we're going to do that is look at step 2. We need to demonstrate that you do get the 75,000. And there's a few ways that you can do this. If you can't show a full year, we'll use a shorter period. So, and the minimum is 3 months, and then you annualize that. So that could be, you take that 3 months and you multiply that by 4. And the way that, and then to sort of prove that with, because when you go to apply, you also need to prove your calculations of how you get the 75,000. So the way you do that is by providing evidence such as a BAS, it could be a profit and loss, and a tax return, or even might even go as far as bank statements. The best way to have a look at this is to have a look at an example. So let's say, for example, here we've got Fred. Fred started his business in October 2019, and his turnover in the 2020 financial year was less than 75,000. So what should Fred do? Well, Fred has 2 options. He could annualize his turnover in the 2020 financial year to show it would have been more than 75,000. So I want to give you an example. Let's say, for example, that his business was operating from October 2019. So if you go from October 2019 to end of June 2020, that's 9 months. So effectively what we do is, let's say, for example, that the turnover in that 9 months was $50,000. So we take $50,000 and divide it by 9 and multiply that by 12, and we get the annualized turnover of 66,666. So he, on that basis, would fail. But let's say, for example, in that period that it was, let's say, for example, in that period there, the turnover was $65,000 for the 9 months. So we'd take $65,000 and divide it by 9 and multiply it by 12, and we'd get 86,666. So therefore, it would be more than 75,000, and he would qualify. If that did not work for him, what we could do as well is we could have a look at one of the quarters in, say, for example, the 2021 financial year. So business might have, like, we went in that first example, I said that, his income only came to equivalent of 60,000. So, okay, he failed in the 2020 year. But what we could do is we start looking in 2021 year, because maybe what might have happened is his business to start with has taken a while to build up. But if we look at the 2021 financial year, he's got at least, he's really built up and it's starting to make some effort and start to, it's I guess the fruits, it's starting to pay dividends, it's starting to earn money. So what we would do is we pick at least one quarter, and it might be in this scenario here, if we had to think about it, you'd probably look at the March quarter, right? So between January, February and March 2021, and have at least, have a look at that turnover, and it has to be at least 18,750 for that quarter, and that would that amount would also exclude GST, and we'd take that amount and multiply it by 4 to show that it is more than 75,000. Okay, so really it's just about seeing what you can do, having the numbers in front of you, and if you're struggling to put these numbers together, you should really seek help from a tax agent or a BAS agent or a qualified accountant. So this is probably a good time in the video just to talk about our other videos that you can subscribe to and check out. So over the last 4 weeks, we've been keeping you up to date and with just not grants, but other information that is relevant during the COVID lockdown period. And it's a good time just to check out our latest videos. So the first one I want to talk about is the latest news on company director responsibilities during the current business lockdown. The next one is, don't be forgotten in the lockdown to get some tips on how you continue to having a marketing campaign. So another great video there with Melissa J. Scott from Divine Creative. And the third one I'd love to point out and share with you is effective workplace leadership. And really, this is a great video because it concentrates on people, and people are the key to business in any success in any business. And it's a great video for anyone who's a business owner or manager that deals with people. And of course, I could not forget to say that, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a great time to do that. And don't forget just not to like and share and subscribe to all our videos. Getting on with the rest of the grants. Okay, so the business grant. Who is it for? Well, that hasn't changed at all. And effectively, it is for those businesses that are got a turnover between 30,000 and 75,000. And the application date to apply does close on the 18th of October. So we have a look at the grant. The grant effectively is $1,500 as a fortnightly payment. And of course, to receive the grant, you must have a 30% decline or more. And you cannot be receiving other grants. The exception to the rule is that the 1,500 rebates grant you can get that at the same time. And the third thing as well that you want to look at is the business has to be your primary source of income. So if it's just a side gig where you're just doing this just to earn a little bit of extra money on the side, but you've got a full-time job, well, you wouldn't qualify. What has changed in the decline period is that minimum 2-week period has extended till the 28th of August. And as I've said in the previous slides where we talked about the business grant and also, oh, sorry, not the business grant, but we looked at the JobSaver grant, that period is extended to August, but also I dare say that if lockdown continues into September, I dare say that date will be extended till most likely end of September. But the best thing you can do is, if you don't qualify now, just keep looking at Service New South Wales and look out for those updates. You do have a few alternative periods there to compare to, and it's the same period in 2019, the same period in 2020, or you can effectively look at the 2 weeks prior to when the Greater Sydney lockdown had started. Where do you apply? Straight on the Service New South Wales website. So the micro business grant. Well, as we said in the previous video, and I suggest you go back to that for a detailed explanation of it all. But in the red here, I've really explained what is the change. We just talked about the alternative periods, and we did talk about that it was up until the 28th of August, and there were the additional alternative periods to look at. And the rest of it is pretty much the same. So looking at one thing, it's just like with the other grants, the business grant and the JobSaver grant, you might have been in a position where, say, for example, you hadn't started your business during that original testing period in 2019. So this is really a slide that is really important for anyone that failed initially when you first had a look at the grant. So effectively, now what we can look at is any business that has commenced between June 2019 and was operating, I guess, up to 1st of June 2021. We can also have a look at, if, say, for example, during one of the periods between June 19 to the 1st of June, if you, say, for example, were sick or had injury or were on leave, where maybe you didn't meet that criteria, where your turnover was less than $30,000 and you just didn't meet it. Or it could be as well, like maybe you had a restructure. So once again, as per the previous slide we talked about for the business grant and the JobSaver grant, if your business had maybe a restructure where you've gone from maybe a sole trader to a company, or maybe you've recently purchased the business. So effectively, okay, the first step, what is it you want to look at? Well, we want to basically demonstrate that you have an equivalent turnover of between $30,000 and less than $75,000 in turnover. So remember, if we go back to the previous slides, to be eligible for the micro business grant, your turnover must be between $30,000 and $75,000. And if you're registered for GST, that doesn't include the GST in your turnover. So the second step is, if you can't show a full year and you're in a position where you need to show a shorter period, the way you can do it is, having a look at just a minimum 3-month period. The third step is providing evidence. And this is what you do when you go and apply for the actual grant. And some of the evidence you might want to look at is 3 months of bank statements, a profit and loss report, and probably even a tax return if you've got one. And if you are registered for GST, you could also supply a BAS. The best thing to do is to have a look at an example. So let's look at Jane. Jane started her business in January 2020. Turnover in 2020 financial year was less than $30,000. So if we were to look at that straight off the cuff, we'd say, well, yeah, okay, less than $30,000 does not qualify. But if, say, for example, in this example here, she really has two options she can look at, right? So the first thing is, we can annualize the turnover in 2020 year to show it would have been between 30,000 and 75,000. So if we looked at January right through to June 2020, that would be 6 months. So let's say for example, she earned $15,000 in that 6-month period. If we were to take $15,000, divide it by 6, and then multiply it by 12, we would get to $30,000, which would mean she would qualify. If, as an example, maybe that turnover for that period was only, let's say it was only $12,000, and we divide it by 6 and times it by 12, it would only come to 24,000, which would mean that she would fail. But nonetheless, what she could probably do is maybe the business in 2021 financial year picked up and was a little bit higher. So what we would do in that scenario there is have a look at maybe one of the quarters. And so a quarter is basically a 3-month period. So effectively what it is, usually it's an example of a quarter would be, let's say for example, the March quarter. So that would be January, February, and March. The June quarter, as an example, would be April, May, and June. But let's say, for example, what we're going to do here is let's have a look at the March quarter. If her turnover was at least $7,500 and less than $18,750, she would qualify. And to have a look and see whether you get to that 30 to 75,000, you multiply that by 4, whatever that figure is in that range, and then we know, well, that's she qualifies. But effectively, throughout that year, you've got to make sure that turnover is less than 75,000. And if that's the case, really, you take that turnover figure and then you qualify from there. But you still got to meet those previous tests where we talked about having that 30% reduction in turnover. So you still got to apply. So really, the first step is have a look at this turnover, make sure you qualify there, and then you've got to go take your testing period, have a look at your turnover and see whether you qualify. The next part of the video, I just want to quickly jump into Xero and demo file. And for any Xero users, show you where you can go in Xero to have a look at where you can see to calculate if you qualify. Okay, so we've just jumped into Xero. This is the demo file. And this is not a client file. So where do you go and have a look at to check out and see whether you fit in the calculations? So what we're going to do is quickly go over here to Accounting, Reports, and then we're going to jump down here to Business COVID Support, and we'll click this COVID-19 Business Support. And what you're going to get here is a little calculator. Now, there's not much data in this particular file, but that won't really matter. But effectively what you do is you look at that impacted period. So depending on what you're doing, whether it's a business grant or it's the micro business grant or the JobSaver, the testing period might be different based on your criteria. But if we would have a look at this, we might say that for the business grant, we want to look between, and remember, you can only look up to the 17th of July for this grant. We're going to have a 2-week period here. So we'll click that. But we can, and then what we can do is, we can have a look and pull down here the same period in 2019, same period in 2020. Or if you're looking at that alternative period before lockdown, come down here and go to select date and jump back down to June. And we'll click here the 12th to the 25th. And effectively what you can do is use this in Xero to try and work out whether you qualify or not. And effectively, depending on what you're qualifying for, it's going to tell you the percentage reduction here. Now, this only works obviously if you've been using Xero for the last 2 years. Or even less, depending on what you're claiming, what period you're looking at. But it's only as good as what the data is in your Xero file. So I guess a few tips is, before you go and look at this test, is your file completely reconciled? If it's not, go and do that first, and then go and apply this. And this doesn't mean that, if you're in a business that's not highly impacted, you still will go and need an accountant's letter. But this is just a great tool where you can work out whether you qualify or not. And just a way to sort of calculate and see where you're at instead of manually looking at profit and loss reports. Okay, well, we've come to the end of our video. Thanks for watching the update. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for brand new weekly videos, up-to-date information on COVID-19 grants, and exclusive videos to help you become an industry leader in your business. Subscribing means you won't miss a thing on any of our weekly updates, videos, and keeping you up to date and helping you create massive financial and personal growth. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week in our next video.